Megan Rogers, principal's office right now.
This is your time to shine. This is the new Shadyside, the promise of a bright future. This is your chance to fulfill that promise.
I'm trying to win Prom Queen, but
The growing anticipation surrounding Fear Street, Prom Queen, has created an atmosphere of revived excitement around the franchise, as audiences are eager to see how this new chapter evolves the blend of teen drama, slasher tension, supernatural undertones, and the trademark Shadyside curse that has defined earlier installments. From the moment early discussions began circulating within fan spaces, the project has been positioned as a return to the tone that first made the series popular. Bright, youthful energy placed violently at odds with the dark legacy of an unlucky town where celebrations never unfold as planned. This new story centers on a prom season that starts with glitter, gossip, and rivalry, but slowly twists into something more sinister, as students realize that the power struggles among them are only a surface-level distraction from something older and hungrier awakening beneath the rituals of high school hierarchy. The thematic direction emphasizes the contrast between the aesthetics of perfect dresses, polished crowns, and spotlights with the creeping threat of someone or something using the prom court rivalry to disguise a more pointed and personal agenda. The narrative foundation positions the Prom Queen competition as a catalyst rather than a backdrop, turning the familiar trope into a pressure cooker where jealousy, insecurity, ambition, and unresolved history collide. Each candidate is painted with sharper emotional nuance, showing how every teenager carries burdens that can be exploited by outside forces. Rumors accelerate, rivalries intensify, social circles fracture, and a collective paranoia begins taking root as strange accidents follow each milestone event leading up to the night of the prom. The creative direction leans heavily on the idea that Shadyside High has always been a stage for tragedies, disguised as youthful milestones, and now the brightest event of the school calendar becomes the darkest. The characters are not just reacting to anonymous threats, they are forced to confront old resentments, forgotten secrets, and unexplained gaps in their memories that hint at a chain of events stretching back decades. These emotional undercurrents shape the tension of the film, giving each scene a sense of volatility where alliances might shift at any moment and no one is certain whether the danger is human or supernatural. One of the focal points of the project is the dynamic portrayal of the lead contender for Prom Queen, who enters the season with confidence but gradually becomes the central figure in a mystery she never volunteered for. Her persona, initially polished and composed, begins cracking under the weight of escalating incidents that target not only her chances of winning, but the equilibrium of her personal life. Strange notes appear in her locker, candid photos circulate with cryptic markings, and someone impersonating her spreads false stories that pit her against former friends. The film treats these occurrences not merely as pranks, but as psychological strikes that suggest a calculated obsession behind the scenes. Her attempt to rise above the chaos only fuels the shadowy figure working to dismantle her reputation, leading her to suspect everyone around her, including those she once trusted implicitly. As she begins to unravel the pattern of attacks, she stumbles into fragments of Shadyside's buried history, discovering parallels between her own experiences and the tragic stories of past prom queens whose lives ended prematurely under mysterious circumstances. The tension escalates as the investigation reveals that the prom queen tradition has always been intertwined with a curse masked behind pageantry, where each crowning has drawn the attention of a malevolent force searching for hosts, sacrifices, or opportunities to resurrect long-forgotten influences. What begins as a teenage rivalry spirals into a battle against a repeating cycle of violence that has been quietly maintained by individuals who benefit from keeping the truth hidden. The story presents an ensemble of characters who each respond differently to this revelation. Some deny it, some exploit it, and some break under the pressure. Friends become suspects. Mentors reveal unexpected connections to past tragedies, and the school administration struggles to maintain order as fear spreads. The secrecy surrounding the tradition becomes a second antagonist, boxing the characters in with half-truths and selective memories that make it difficult to trust any version of the story they are told. Every piece of information the protagonist uncovers comes with consequences, forcing her to decide whether preserving her safety is worth sacrificing the truth that could save future students. The final act of the film intensifies the prom setting into a visual and emotional crescendo where the decorations, live music, flashing lights, and celebratory atmosphere serve as a stark contrast to the lurking danger waiting to strike. The filmmakers focus on creating a sense of dread disguised beneath choreography and celebration, using the growing unease among the characters to fuel suspense. The protagonist is torn between participating in the event to draw out the antagonist or abandoning the night altogether and risking more casualties. The decision to attend triggers a sequence of events that rapidly unravels the conspiracy surrounding the prom tradition. The revelation of the true antagonist brings a confrontation that blends slasher brutality with supernatural implications, forcing the protagonist to navigate both physical danger and psychological manipulation. The climax exposes the long-running pattern of choosing a prom queen not as a symbol of popularity, but as an offering, transforming the event from a celebration into a ritual with catastrophic consequences for the chosen girl. In crafting Fear Street, Prom Queen, the production aims to recapture the gritty energy of earlier franchise entries while heightening the emotional realism of teenage anxieties. The project emphasizes visual storytelling that highlights the contrast between Shadyside's seemingly normal suburban environment and the violence embedded in its history. Bold lighting shifts, carefully framed shots of school hallways, symbolic close-ups of dresses, crowns, and mirrors, and the repeated use of prom paraphernalia as threatening imagery contribute to an atmosphere where every glamorous detail feels unnervingly sharp. The cinematography reinforces the idea that darkness in Shadyside often hides behind beauty, and beauty often hides something worse. This design philosophy permeates the story, inviting viewers to look beyond appearances and question whether the social structures of high school are harmless fun or rituals that mask deeper dangers. Early impressions from behind the scenes accounts focus on how the production invested in elevating the emotional weight of the story. The development process placed significant emphasis on grounding the characters' reactions in relatable teenage experiences, fear of humiliation, desire for belonging, and the pressure to maintain perfect images on social media and within their peer groups. These personal stakes make the larger supernatural and slasher elements more impactful, as the threat feels intertwined with real emotional vulnerabilities, rather than abstract horror. The creative team has discussed building complex character arcs that evolve alongside the escalating danger, ensuring that each key character undergoes meaningful transformation by the time the story reaches its conclusion. The central theme revolves around the idea that identity in high school is fragile, shaped by rumors, expectations, and the struggle to be seen, and in Shadyside's case, even that fragile identity can become a weapon. A significant portion of the film explores the subtle emotional manipulation that unfolds among the prom candidates. The story examines how whispered comments, anonymous messages, and re-edited photos generate distrust and amplify insecurities. The film positions these psychological attacks as equally threatening as physical danger, showing how stress pushes some characters into rash decisions that unintentionally aid the antagonist. As competition escalates, students face the uncomfortable truth that the social system they participate in creates emotional vulnerabilities, ripe for exploitation. The protagonist's attempts to stay grounded gradually transform her from a confident competitor into a determined investigator, someone who understands that the Prom Queen title is no longer a harmless accolade, but a target placed on her back. She begins to question whether the desire for recognition is worth the cost, as the line between ambition and survival becomes increasingly blurred. The story also introduces familial pressures that shape the protagonist's emotional journey. Her family has its own complicated history with Shadyside, including relatives who experienced unexplained tragedies during their time at the same high school. These generational echoes serve as clues that something more calculated is at play. Through conversations with family members, she uncovers discrepancies in old stories and half-forgotten warnings that hint at a pattern of selecting prom queens who fit a specific profile. These revelations deepen the narrative's psychological dimension, making the protagonist's struggle not only a battle against external threats, but also a confrontation with a cursed legacy she never asked for. The more she uncovers, the more she realizes that her participation in the prom tradition was never about choice, but about being shaped by forces she did not understand. As the investigation progresses, the protagonist uncovers a secret society of Shadyside alumni who have monitored the prom tradition for decades. This group operates with the belief that managing the curse requires sacrifice and that interfering risks unleashing greater danger on the town. Their existence adds another layer of tension, as they are willing to obstruct her efforts in order to preserve their version of control. Their involvement complicates the question of who the real antagonist is, the supernatural force, the individual orchestrating attacks, or the people who believe they are protecting the town through morally questionable decisions. The protagonist's confrontation with this group provides some of the story's most emotionally charged moments, forcing her to weigh personal risk against the broader implications of exposing the truth. The film reaches its emotional peak during the final confrontation at prom, where revelations, betrayals, and acts of bravery converge in a climactic sequence that reshapes the fate of Shadyside. The protagonist discovers the hidden significance of the crown, confronts the shadowy figure responsible for orchestrating the attacks, and faces the supernatural threat that has lingered beneath the town's surface. The resolution brings both catharsis and lingering uncertainty, leaving viewers with the unsettling feeling that the curse may not be broken, but merely disrupted. The story's final moments offer a blend of triumph and dread, emphasizing that in Shadyside, victories often come at a price. Fear Street, Prom Queen aims to deliver a narrative that intertwines emotional depth, atmospheric horror, and franchise continuity, creating a new chapter that stands on its own while enriching the larger mythos. The story explores how celebrations hide fractures, how traditions disguise danger, and how courage emerges when young people refuse to accept the roles forced upon them. The project promises a blend of character-driven storytelling and intense horror elements that continue the legacy of Fear Street while offering new twists that keep the franchise unpredictable. With its focus on psychological tension, escalating danger, and the haunting legacy of Shadyside, the film positions itself as a compelling continuation designed to satisfy longtime fans and engage new audiences, ready for a fresh take on teen horror.